So welcome everybody to the Project Mercury Innovation Showcase for Cohort 5. I am Tech Sergeant Daniel Holter. I am a facilitator and a designer at Air Force CyberWorks, also the founder of Agitare, a community of practice for facilitation, design, futures, and sense making. We got a number of Project Mercury cohort members in there. I'm delighted to have been invited to MC this event along with Lieutenant Colonel Joe Toga Bisson.
Thanks, Daniel. This is going to be a fantastic event. As you mentioned, I'm the other Toga in the innovation space. You all might be looking for Toga True, but I'm Toga Bisson, and all Togas are good Togas. I'm an instructor and a leadership facilitator at the Profession of Arms Center of Excellence, or PACE, on the campus at Air University in Montgomery, Alabama. Even more importantly today, though, I'm a Cohort 4 team member graduate and a proud coach here on Cohort 5. Let me tell you, I can't wait to return next season as a mentor coach for Cohort 6 starting in January.
Excellent. Yeah, we've got a 2-for-2 solid record for people with Toga as their call sign in the innovation space. So keep an eye out for that one. Toga's stock is very high at the moment. So honestly, one of my favorite things about Project Mercury as kind of an outsider, or like I've interacted with a lot of participants, is their ability to draw the participants back in to participate in this enabling capacity as mentors and coaches, and to help generate the next generation of innovators. So each innovator in this cohort was selected so they can continue that tradition of building a diverse, dispersed community of agents embedded in units across the Air Force and beyond. So following this cohort, each of these individuals has the opportunity, and some might say the responsibility, to use their influence to accelerate change throughout their career. And that aligns really well with my thinking these days around the subject of innovation, driven not by a simple formula or tool set, but by being these activated and change agents charged with this role and this mission and this identity. The goal here being to make chefs, not people who are good at reading recipe books.
Thanks for that. During today's showcase, we'll share the final pitches from our Cohort 5 teams. These teams have simultaneously completed 90 days of academic study, along with hands-on application you'll see here today. These teams have become colleagues and friends in a vibrant collaborative community that's growing exponentially. It's their hope that many of these projects will leave a lasting impression, and more importantly, it's our hope that they'll have a chance to work on many more of the innovation projects that you all have for them in the future.
So we are honored today to have with us 3 esteemed guest judges that will evaluate today's presentations and ultimately select our award winners.
From Air University, representing Lieutenant General Hecker, we have Brigadier General Leslie Mayer. General Mayer should be familiar. She was actually the person who received my cohort's or my team's pitch last go. General Mayer's current assignment is commander at the Gene M. Holmes Center for Officers Sessions and Citizen Development, which covers ROTC, OTS, and junior ROTC.
We also have Dr. Ben Zweibelson, a professor from Joint Special Operations University, a prolific writer on the topic of military design. We're excited for his upcoming book titled Design for Defense, War, Change, and Innovation, due to be published soon. And we were standing by on a third judge. Is Rachel with us?
No, not yet. So we're going to introduce Dr. Jeff DeGraff, who's the founder of the Innovatrium, a professor of practice at the Ross School of Business at the University of Michigan, and just the dean of innovation, and has taught at senior levels for our Air Force, and has been with us from the founding of Project Mercury. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you to all of our judges for being with us today. I would also like to mention and pay respect to the head coach for Cohort 5, Dr. Ethan Eagle. Dr. Eagle is an adjunct professor at the University of Maryland with a PhD in aerospace engineering. And he pushed these innovators and prodded them into these vast areas of uncertainty and frustration, all with the purpose and all under the expert eye of this fearless head coach. Dr. Eagle is not with us today due to family circumstances, but we want to express our gratitude to him for setting the environment for growth and radical collaboration. Ladies and gentlemen, it's now my pleasure to introduce our host, Commander of the Gene M. Holmes Center, Brigadier General Leslie Mayer.
Well, thank you so much. And this is going to be a fun day. Let's just start off with that, right? Because anytime that you're talking innovation, it's got to get your blood excited about being in the same space with innovative thinkers. So I'm really looking forward to this. And so the projects that have been outlined to me interest me, every single one. And so the questions are going to be really rich, and it'll be a day of discovery on both sides. So on behalf of General Hecker, the president and commander of Air University, I am thrilled to be sitting before you. And I would like to thank formally Ben and Dr. DeGraff for being my partners in crime as we decide the fate of these wonderful projects. But I also would like to throw a couple of other thank yous out there to Mr. Jim Jordansky, long-time fellow airman with me that helped me find my path back to this venue so that I could be a part of judging this. And then Dr. Walsh, and hopefully we get to see Rachel here in a couple of minutes. You know, I've been to a couple of foreign schools, and I will tell you the one thing that I think that Americans keep their edge on is their ability to kind of, you know, shake the Etch-a-Sketch and start over. And I'm kind of a frustrated innovator when I'm in a group of people that are just trying to get a task done and not seeing how the task could lead to so much more. And so I'm thrilled to be in a room with people that can see so much more. And so as we go through these following projects, we've got a few things that we've got to get accomplished, right? We've got a lot of tension in the world. Gray zone tactics are all around us. General Brown has charged us with accelerate, change, or lose. Our new SecDef has put us on a path that says, hey, we can't settle. We've got players out there that are just grabbing our attention, and we need to be sure that we are ready for that challenge. And there's all kinds of terms being thrown around about what's the right way to set us on a footing for the future. And so with that, I'm looking forward to these projects because we are at the precipice of a few new futures with these projects. And with that, I'll hand it back over. Thank you.
Thank you, General Mayer. It's my pleasure to also welcome Dr. Wendy Walsh, AETC Chief Learning Officer, and the Faculty Director and Founder of Project Mercury, Dr. Jeff DeGraff. Jeff has been called the Dean of Innovation. He's also a Professor of Practice at the Ross School of Business, University of Michigan. Dr. DeGraff, over to you for opening comments.
Well, I want to just say, first of all, it's so good to see so many familiar faces here. And boy, this has been quite a long journey. What's been really rewarding, any of you who went to AFA, I got to talk the last couple of months to just about everybody who's got 4 stars or more recently. And a lot of the projects that you're going to work on or you're working on today, some of those have really trickled up and have gotten some real traction. And I want to make sure that everybody understands that the whole concept of you know, speed and magnitude and winning, which we are hearing from the chief, is essential that everybody on this video cast take that very seriously. And there's a lot we can learn from each other. And where we started this journey and where we are right now on this journey is really remarkable. I'm sure Jim Jordansky can tell you sort of what, you know, maybe the early stages to how far we've come in these later stages. But I also want to add, you know, I spent a lot of time in companies that you read about. You know, I've been an advisor for years to Google and Apple and all those companies you read about. There's a long way to go. So the whole idea here today, I think, is we're going to encourage each other. We're going to push each other in a positive way. But this is the beginning of momentum. And the real challenge will be when you leave here, how do you actually create and sustain the momentum at a larger scale with more people so that, in fact, we bring the fight to anybody who dares challenge us. And one of the great things I think about America is, you know, we might not be the smartest people on the planet, but we certainly do have a culture for making things better and new. And boy, we're looking to the people who are going through this cohort to really exemplify that in the way that they conduct themselves from here on out. And I just want to tell you, from the meetings that I've had with most of the groups, the office hours, I'm really impressed. I'm really excited to hear what you have to say today, and we're really here to support you. So give it your best, show us your quality, and boy, we're looking forward to it.
Thank you, Dr. DeGraff. And now let's get to our main event. Cohort 5 of Project Mercury set out with the charge to build collaborative networks outside the traditional Air Force lanes. They waded through some stubborn problems and sought out unusual ways to make a disproportionate impact.
For general context, regardless of the topic, all of these teams were intentionally designed to harness constructive conflict, bringing together diverse experiences, outlooks, personalities, and approaches to problem solving. They refined their problem statements through research and prismatic thinking, or put another way, they thought about things wearing hats like the speedy athlete, or a creative artist, or a wizened sage, or a disciplined engineer. They pursued connections and context, adding to their business card collections and toolkits. They experimented. They examined and designed projects that were wow and worth doing. They prepared a pitch with the coaching of their innovators in residence. And thank you, all innovators in residence in the audience. And they enlisted a sponsor who can take the batons from their team and build out programs of record and things that last.
So today we will feature 3 teams with live pitches. However, our remaining 3 teams have each produced short film pitches that will play during the judges' deliberation. You'll want to stick around during this part because we will be counting on you, the audience, to vote for the best video pitch. Videos from all 6 teams will be made available after the event on our LinkedIn page. And I'm being told that our 3rd guest judge has joined us. And so I would like to introduce Rachel Kirkhan. Rachel's professional journey is diverse and inspiring. We've been working closely with her at CyberWorks on the Project Holodeck effort, which includes her company Productable, an effort to kind of use a portfolioed approach for innovation management across the Air Force. It's an exciting outgrowth, actually, of a Cohort 2 Project Mercury pitch to the Vice Chief of Staff of the Air Force.
Well, I'm so glad to be here, and I am so sorry for the delay. I have a newborn, so my life is slightly crazy right now with sleep deprived and getting my schedule wrong. So I really appreciate everyone's patience and really, really excited to be here and see all of these projects and looking forward to hearing from all of you.
Great. Thank you, Rachel, and welcome. All right, let's get to the pitches. After each of these presentations, the judges will have a short Q&A with the team, and the audience should feel free to ask questions throughout. Please utilize the chat. Zoom allows you to get multimodal, right? So use that chat, ask questions. Members of each team will try to answer them in real time if they're able to, or they can drop contact information if you need to have a longer discussion, or each team has a breakout room if you want to join there for a little small session to connect and find out more about their projects.
All right, and now I am delighted to introduce Team 7, the Chain Gang, presenting their project titled Project Heroes, their approach to the wicked problem of the invasion of Taiwan. They were coached by new coach Aaron Cross and alumni coach Adam Miles. Remember, you may use the chat feature in Zoom to ask questions during their pitch. Let's go.
Okay, good afternoon. I'm Shane Raymond, and I'm here with Team 7, the Chain Gang, to let you in on a project that we constructed during Project Mercury. Since we are the first team, I'd like to give you a quick overview of Project Mercury. It is a joint venture between Air University and University of Michigan's Innovatrium to create certified professional innovators in just a 90-day program. Each cohort, the students were divided into small teams that are tasked to solve some of the Air Force's greatest challenges. We were tasked was stopping China from invading Taiwan. Project Heroes is our idea of how to solve that small problem. I'm going to begin by telling a brief story. We began on Chinese D-Day. The Chinese Communist Party, the senior leadership, has decided that all the conditions are met. They know the military order of battle of Taiwan and the key locations that they must capture. They are confident that none of Taiwan's allies will come to help them. So the invasion begins in ships, helicopters, and aircraft. Taiwan's military is crushed. All that is left is to occupy the country and control the population. The first thing that China does is cut the undersea fiber optics cables that connects Taiwan's population to the World Wide Web. Now, no one can see the acts of the soldiers or the atrocities that they begin to commit. They can operate with impunity. The civilians are unable to communicate with each other because the cell towers are down, and they're unable to mount any sort of organized resistance. China now controls the narrative and ensures that the only footage that gets out supports the Chinese agenda. They show that the Taiwanese people are happily welcoming their reunification. The digital curtain is closed. The World News Network, and by extension, the world population, begins to forget that there is still a conflict in Taiwan. There isn't any shocking footage to show. There are no Taiwanese voices being heard. The chain gang wants to stop this from happening by using Project Heroes. We want to keep raising up these voices and to shine a light of truth on the actual happenings in occupied Taiwan. The wars of today are more than wars of tanks and boats and planes. They're information operations. We want to fight that information control. As we saw in the Russian annexation of Crimea and the crushing of democracy supporting dissidents in Hong Kong by China, the narrative matters. But getting real live video and communication from people, getting real live video and communications from people are what sways the hearts and minds of the world to care. Look at Tiananmen Square. This rebellion would never have captured our attention for decades if it weren't for this iconic video. One anonymous grocery shopper stopping a line of tanks. The contrast of his normalcy and the tanks rolling down a civilian street stands with us far longer and stronger than any manufactured state propaganda. Our solution to this problem is to provide body cams to the people. Not actual body cams, but instead, we want to utilize the existing and new CCTV cameras and home security cameras. I'll talk more about the specifics in later slides, but the intent is to capture the actions of China in occupied Taiwan in a spider web of cameras to enable a global neighborhood watch. Project Heroes will ensure that every action that China takes in Taiwan will be bogged down in the knowledge that they're sending out vibrations in our web. If a Chinese soldier beats an unarmed civilian, they might find themselves on BBC or Al Jazeera in minutes. But how will this get out? You just said that China cut the arteries connecting Taiwan to the world. That is why Project Heroes is designed to be robust. When the cell towers go down and the power goes out, we will keep that home footage rolling. In addition to the spiderwebs of cameras, we will utilize commercial low Earth orbit satellite internet connections. These satellites are owned by international corporations, and any action taken against them would be an act of war. We will also be rolling out solar panels to provide key nodes in the network with power. These technologies, cameras, solar panels, and satellite internet connections have all advanced like crazy in the civilian world. We have chosen them because they're not experimental. The cameras and solar panels are being used right now by normal people. We chose to go with satellite internet because there's a lot of development being done right now with it. Multiple companies are launching tons of small satellites. Plus, the ground antennas are getting much smaller and cheaper. Project Heroes is not built around one company or technology. This means that any company's cameras, solar panels, or satellites can be used. This makes it more difficult for countries like China to simply jam or hack the hardware. When you're a Taiwanese civilian relying on Project Heroes to get the world to care that your family home just got bombed, you really don't want your entire spiderweb sensor network to just be one kind of Ring doorbell. Project Heroes is built around ease of use. The equipment is built so that the normal everyday people setting it up can just plug the equipment in. Many companies have paved the way for making equipment easy to set up, and we are following their footsteps. The magic primarily happens in routing the camera traffic to the satellite internet dishes in case of emergency. During normal days, the cameras can work like normal. We're going to keep the home video at home and the CCTV camera footage with the police. We purposefully chose to keep the types of things that are already being used by normal people. This helps to keep the costs down. There aren't any exclusive contracts with the big contracting companies. Project Heroes is built around $20 home cameras instead of $10,000 special DoD cameras. Since this is all normal stuff that normal people can buy, the host countries can buy the equipment. There are none of the conflicts associated with buying equipment for foreign governments. Project Heroes can also be built as a packaged system, which can be delivered straight to areas that need it. Imagine another hurricane hits the Gulf Coast and knocks out all the cell towers and power. It's pretty standard. Right now, we rely upon ham radio operators to keep the communications going between sites. With Project Heroes, emergency response organizations could quickly set up solar-powered comms that could include things like Wi-Fi for refugees to reach out. Hello, Mom, I'm safe. Or internet voice comms to coordinate between sites. A package system like this would also be rather cheap and could be left in place by military forces to collect weather data, motion sensor or camera movement, or really any Internet of Things equipment they could want. So if Project Heroes is realized, we can thwart the invasion of Taiwan by catching China in our spider web, shining the light of truth on their actions. We can keep the world invested, and we can give the people a voice that cannot be killed. All right, and one more slide. During the Q&A session, I would like to keep up the cost and time slide in case there's any questions about specifics. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Shane. That was awesome. It's time to open up for judges' questions. And let's start with Dr. Zweibelson.
Okay, first, I want to say good job to the team. You can take a deep breath and relax. You're not in Shark Tank. All of you did well. And your design construct, as you presented it, it was brief. You provided, for me, information about the legacy system, the way things were. You presented your design proposal. You explained what you saw as the problem set and how to mitigate it and what the future ought to entail with the application of the design. So check, 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 good to go. Let me ask you a little bit about your design experience in doing this, as well as what do you think for you, what is design really for in security applications? So I'm going to ask each of you just 4 questions, and I ask you to take a piece of paper, you can write it down, and it's just for each of you. You don't need to share your information, although you can afterwards because it might be fun for intergroup discussions. And these questions are just either or, so A or B, and there is no wrong answer. So when you all were doing this design challenge, which do you think was more important for your design concept here to do? Either A, convergence, as in making sure your design looked and adhered to other examples of design being done by the military, following a methodology, having slides that look a particular way, having phrases and terms. So either A is convergence or B, divergence, something completely different, something out of left field that no one's ever seen before, something that would look alien and strange, even to maybe experienced designers. So that's the first question. Which one do you think was most important in your design experience thus far? Convergence, A, or B, divergence? Second question, which do you feel was more important for your design approach here? Reducing risk conceptually or increasing conceptual risk? And no, I'm saying conceptual risk. So we're not talking about lives and equipment. We're talking about ideas, the risk of doing something that might fail. versus reducing risk so that you're sure that you're going to be successful in this challenge. So A is low risk, B is high risk. Third question for you. Your design deliverable that you've produced here, that you're proposing to your organization for this complex security challenge, and it is a compelling one that is at the national level and the multinational level right now today. Is your design deliverable, did you intend for it to reinforce the institutional norms and policies and doctrine and practices that the Air Force currently has, that Joint Forces and NATO currently use? So is this basically an incremental adaptation, something that's going to make it slightly better? Is A, reinforcement, or B, transformative, something that would shock and disrupt and shatter the existing institutional norms? So A or B on that. Last question, analysis versus synthesis. In your design experience over the course of these several weeks where you were working with this, do you feel that your design that you worked with as a team, what you did here, was it geared more towards analytical processes, which is breaking things down, reducing them, inputs, outputs, A plus B equals C, quantifiable? Or do you feel that synthesis, the wholes, the larger, the bigger, examining things collectively, was more important? So systemic would be more nonlinear, emergent complexity theory. Analytical is more towards how we've looked at warfare for the past 3 centuries at least. So Newtonian physics, physical domains, breaking things down into A scope, PMECE, and so on. So those are my 4 questions. And then based upon your answers, what I would offer is that if you put more of A down for the 4 questions that I asked, that type of a design experience is more of an incremental, gradual process improvement design approach, versus if you selected B for a majority of your answers of the 4, that's a little bit more of a radical, disruptive, and dangerous type of design. And that's also the type of design that could create a lot of hazards for you as a young designer, but it's also the ones that can bring out some really radical constructs. So I'd open it back up to your team. Tell me, what were some of your answers and what do you think? Are you more of an A designer or a B designer? What was your experience with this?
I think that we were convergent. We tended to increase risk and the transformative and synthesis. In a lot of these categories, though, we were closer to center than we were to either extreme, for sure. There was a lot of behind the scenes work that we ended up resolving down on this. And I think that some of that was moving from that increased risk to reducing the risk, because we really wanted to see something that would actually be rolled out within the DoD versus a highly experimental thought process.
Okay. And so your population, then your design, I can't see any of them but you right now, Shane. Some of the answers were more a combination, no group or no individuals entirely A or entirely B. That's what you're telling me.
Individually, I think we swung pretty hard one way or another. For example, I'm very analytical, very red, one step to another step to another step, engineering thinking. But we definitely had team members that were very much on the synthesis side. And what the result we have here is kind of the averaging and trying to take the best of each person.
The last thought I'd offer to the group, and I'll throw a reference out. If you haven't heard, there's a book called The Silent Transformation by Julian, and it's a postmodern kind of Eastern philosophy book. But what it proposes is this concept that when we look in the mirror every day, we know that's us every single day, even though when you look at an old photograph of you as a child or even 20 years ago, depending on how old you are, you recognize that you have changed. But that change, that transformation is so gradual, it's so careful, it's almost invisible to us as it's happening in complexity. With a Chinese invasion, The one that you promote is, and you use the D-Day World War II example. And that's kind of the thing that we as a military, we always run to World War I and World War II. Those are our golden eras, if you will. And that's a very direct invasion. However, going back to this silent transformation, could China potentially invade Taiwan in a way that's almost invisible, that the Taiwanese and even our military don't realize it until it happens? And there's countless examples of this happening in us culturally. One example I use with my students is the rise of seatbelts. And for those of you old enough to remember that we didn't have to wear seatbelts for a long time, they've just kind of gradually come into society. Same with the cessation of smoking, with New Zealand today outlawing smoking in their country. But a lot of Americans don't smoke anymore. And it's been this kind of gradual thing, although there's been the gradual rise of vaping. So there you go. So in this concept of an invisible transformation, could there be potentially an invisible invasion that isn't as direct as you depicted? Any thoughts from your group?
Yes, absolutely. We discussed this almost 2 months ago, so towards the beginning of the project, and our group came to the consensus that the war's already begun, right? There is no D-Day. It's a gradual, in all reality, we're at war in every domain except physical right now. And in the information age, that's a real realization that we need to act upon. Over.
Great. I open up to the other judges for any other comments or thoughts. Very enjoyable presentation.
Excellent. Yeah, let's queue up one more question from one of the other judges, if there is a question for team 1 or team 7, rather. Sorry.
I'll ask one for sure. First off, I really enjoyed it. And I'm really curious to hear, if you imagine, let's just pretend this all works for a minute. Everything went exactly as we planned. It's amazing. And we got everything we wanted out of it. And if you can imagine going back to the back of your head and thinking what's the thing that keeps you up at night from that actually happening? What's our biggest assumption that if this were to break, it would be the thing from keeping all of that magic from happening? And I'm curious if you have a sense of what you think that most fearful point of failure is.
Yes, the biggest risk currently, and the thing that could break all of this, is the assumption that A, Taiwan, and B, the Taiwanese internet service providers are willing to do any of this at all. If China goes in and shuts down the ISPs in addition, or they perform any cyber actions, we lose that Ethernet network that ties all the homes together and ties the CCTV cameras together. And right now, we, in this 90 days, didn't have enough time, or I shouldn't say that. We didn't pursue RF radio options in order to connect these, primarily because of how limited that is and how hard it is, like in the US, to work with the FCC to get dedicated frequencies. But that is something we would want to get more robust in the future before we would roll this out.
Got it. And are there ways that you have, sorry, quick follow-up, are there ways that you're experimenting early on and learning to see if those risks are concerns? Is there any way we can learn now, if you will?
I think if this were a DoD effort, how I would roll this out currently to assume those risks would be to build this network and then task our own people, our best of the best cyber and information operations people, to say, come on in, break it, right? Try and make this not work, and then try and roll it out in that way. Use ourselves as our own enemy.
Cool. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Excellent. And team, you have a lot of work. There's plenty of questions in the chat that you're going to have to address. I think you sparked an interest with a good portion of the population here. So bravo with that. Way to get us started. And I think with that, we do have to move on. So bravo, Chain Gang. Next up is Team House. This team tackled the topic of how to optimize the supply chain in a contested logistics environment. They were mentored by new coach Sean West and alumni coach Heidi Gustafson. Ladies and gentlemen, Team House with their project titled Hydra Prize.
So as we know, the world is changing fast, and every day new technologies change the way that we work, live, and play. And we owe it to our warfighters to quickly adapt new technologies to make those technologies widely available in the field. As our adversaries become bolder, we must also evolve our logistics strategies to ensure that there is uninterrupted and sustained operations in contested environments. One way to support the future logistics strategy is to reduce demand. And one way to support reducing that demand is to use existing and emerging technologies to create more durable supplies and equipment and reduce the need for resupply. I'd like you to take a moment to think about all the fabric items that we use to address what our adversaries are using against us in the field. When those items are damaged, they are discarded and then reordered. And this causes an unnecessary burden on our supply chain. Many of these items are big and they're bulky. And quite frankly, if they're damaged, resupply can be time-consuming and expensive. For example, one damaged large area maintenance tent can cost the military hundreds of thousands of dollars, and time and manpower in replacing those items and transporting those items away from the battle space and bringing replacements back in. So there has to be a better way, and we think we found it. Through our research with the Project Mercury team, we found an emerging technology that we think can help us develop super strong, durable, and self-healing fabric materials. The self-healing fabrics can make our tents last longer and allow our airmen and guardians to make quick repairs in the field. A team of scientists at Penn State University, led by Dr. Melik Demirel, professor of engineering, science, and mechanics, has developed a biosynthetic fiber composed of proteins similar to silk, but inspired by those found in squid's teeth. The fiber can be made into fabrics and filters, and this is the important part, with self-healing properties. It may sound incredible, but it's true. If the treated fabric is damaged, broken fibers can be reattached with water, heat, and a little pressure, all while enhancing the durability of the fabric. Self-healing coatings can be applied not only to textiles, but to single fibers and threads, which can be woven into self-repairing smart garments. And just as importantly, because the fibers are organic, they are biodegradable, which reduces pollution caused by synthetic fibers. And ultimately, they become stronger than they were before. So you may be thinking to yourself, if this amazing technology is so good, how much does it cost? Well, current production for high-end polymers like this is about $10 per kilogram. The current production of squid wing teeth biosynthetic polymers is about $100 per kilogram. The good news is that with large-scale production and a 10% higher yield on the protein extraction process, our team feels that we can match the industry standard at $10 per kilogram. Now, ask you to imagine all the other applications for a strong, durable, self-healing, economically sustainable fabric. And imagine all the people around the world who are working on the problem. Do we want to be the first with that solution? The answer is yes. We're asking the members of our esteemed panel and those of you listening to pledge to help us to find a sponsor to take this idea to the next step. What we're proposing is an X Prize type competition called the Hydra Prize, named after the Greek mythological self-healing snake. We're looking at creating a $1 million cash prize that's open to universities, small businesses, and other innovative teams based in the US who can produce, create concept ideas or designs and prototypes of a self-healing fabric. And it has to meet those criteria of being eco-friendly, sustainable, and works readily with available materials. We're asking you to help us champion and fast track this idea. We, as innovators on this team, believe that we owe our airmen, our guardians, our soldiers, our sailors this opportunity, and that we don't let another great idea that didn't go anywhere die in the system. It's important. And in the 21st century, that has to be the new paradigm that we set and sustain for our future success. At this time, I would like to ask the indulgence of the panel to please, we would love to hear your questions. I'd also like to ask, in the spirit of the collaborative effort that our team operated on for the last 90 days, to ask my fellow teammates to turn on their cameras as we are ready and willing, and quite frankly, looking forward to your probing questions from our panel of distinguished judges. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Jason. That was wonderful and thought-provoking. Thank you to you and Team House. And now on to our judges. And this time we will start with Rachel Kerr-Kahn. Rachel, if you could open up for questions.
Sure. Well, first off, I really love that. I'm also dying to know how you guys came across this, or how that professor came across that finding. It's just unbelievable. My mind's going crazy with like all of the college students that are excited to never sew again from this product and all the fun things you could do with it. I'm curious. I mean, I love the way that you set up the competition. Can you go back to that slide where you were talking about how you set up the, yeah. Oh, that was it. Hydro Prize. Exactly. So can you tell me a little bit more about what success looks like for this? So I love this idea of this competition, but how do we know that we've actually helped these ideas come forward? Because as you guys know, Valley of Death is really painful. So what is it that we're doing in this setup that's actually going to create a great outcome for the project that wins and help it move forward?
Sure, ma'am, and that's a fantastic question. And again, I thank you for your time today. I'm going to initially answer that question, and if there's a seam or gap that I've failed to cover, I'd certainly ask my team in a collaborative spirit to help me fill in those gaps. First, let me address the. You did ask a fundamental question that gets after this Hydro Prize concept. Why squid teeth? Squid teeth are one of the few natural products out there that self-replicate. Canine, bovine, even human teeth will not do what squid teeth are capable of. To your more fundamental question, this idea of a Hydro Prize, we're looking at a need for a beta test that runs in a three-phase component. The first phase is something funded to about $150,000 for somebody to come forward with an idea where we can test the strength and repairability of this fabric. And that also means something like being able to see what the impact is on human beings. Because right now, this fabric cannot, the testing phase has not gotten to the point where it's actually applied to humans. Whether or not it can be put on human skin, things of that nature. It's in the very nascent phases. Once we go from that point into the phase two, we're looking at a potentially $750,000 to $1 million for productions of some type of self-healing fabrics, where maybe at a low end spectrum, this can be tested in the field or in a more difficult environment, something like what the U.S. Army NATIX Research Lab does when they test materials. And then finally, to our phase three, anywhere from $5 million to $10 million, we can actually begin looking at a scalability test for this. Why I bring this up, while the prize is initially a grub stake, so to speak, to get people thinking about this from an outside the enterprise organizational model, and actually it was touched upon in that last discussion with the other team, what we're looking for is other agencies, other institutions, quite frankly, other individuals are willing to come forward with their ideas that have a nascent beginning where then we can provide additional opportunities in a beta test environment to send something to the field where soldiers and our members of our military can use. But we have to provide some incentives. And we think this Hydro Prize is a way of doing that.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that clarification. I know there's a lot of judges who have questions, or other judges that have questions. So I love to hand it off and hear what other people have to ask.
So this is General Mayor. I see a great use of this technology in HADR, right? Because having that stuff stored and it's up against the elements and that kind of thing and having it ready to go. What I was curious about is being that this is a natural biological, fiber substance, whatever you want to classify it as, does it deteriorate? Does it have a shelf life that would kind of put this at risk if we were to kind of have it all over preset?
Yes, ma'am, and thank you. And that's a good question. So to answer the long-term question, that would require additional field testing to see the durability, because there's two challenges here. Number one, there's the squid tech material that is applied, and then there is the fabric itself, whatever base fabric that this is applied to, whether it be cotton or some other type of material. So there's two parts to that field testing to determine whether or not the viability of this lasts longer than, say, current materials. I mentioned the idea of these large unit maintenance tents. And quite frankly, as an end user of those at one time or another, their value after about 6 months in the desert diminishes rapidly. So part of this concept of going through the beta test is seeing if adding this squid tech material does give us more tensile strength, more sustainability in a field environment like NTC or the desert or the jungle. Because the property right now certainly has flexibility and is relatively easy to work with. But it would require a test to see if the durability of the product will outlast a current product. What I can say for certain is this: any self-healing material is certainly a larger benefit, and it actually sort of addresses a comment that Rachel made about a sewing kit. If that will reduce the workload on an airman in the field, even incrementally, to allow them to do a more critical task in the field, then we would suggest that at least looking at this as an option is worth the funding, is worth the beta test. Because, for example, that large unit maintenance tent, that airman could be working on a helicopter engine, vice having to repair that tent. So in our mind, no, quite frankly, until the field test happened, we can't tell you how long this would last, but it's certainly worth the effort to look at it to see if it gives us a better product than what we currently have.
Thank you.
All right. Do we have any additional questions from
I just have one. This is Jeff. First of all, nice presentation. Thank you so much. One of the things about the way you're thinking about this that we might want to turn upside down is you're putting material science in the service of strategy, or innovation in the service of strategy, which is a common movement for people, particularly in hierarchical organizations. Have you considered doing it the other way around, like we do in industry? Have you considered what material science can do and how it can radically change strategy? Think about what's happening with graphene, what's happening with pigments, what's happening in ultraviolet light in the world of what's going on in business. The notion is that could greatly change your strategy and give you a relatively significant advantage by putting strategy in the service of innovation as opposed to the other way around. So I think this would be a great first effort, but I think it could open the door to a lot of other efforts in this vein.
If I may jump in to your point there, Jeff. So we have, and the question was asked in the comments, some other capabilities of it. Dr. Malik Demerol has tested it and mixed it because it is a compound-based polymer. So on the molecular level, they've mixed it with graphene. And as we know, graphene has a 100 to 300 times strength of steel, the most powerful tensile strength known to man at this time. When mixed with the squid ring tech, it actually makes it flexible. And if you're unfamiliar with graphene, it is one incredibly brittle substance. But in a video that was shown to us, they took the graphene and they were making waves with it. And which obviously reduces the brittle question, but it had no loss of molecular structure as far as compound strength, meaning that it maintained that 100 to 300x of steel, but improved the extreme brittleness of it to a product that was rollable, almost like a fruit roll-up, if you will. So it was something I did put it into the chat that we're looking at fabrics first because it appeared to be a path of least resistance as far as adaptation, and but that we do see the vast array of applications for this technology.
Thanks, John. Yeah, thank you for bringing that into the discussion.
Yes, absolutely. And the last component is the hydrophobics. So question that was also asked about this was, is this product capable of being hydrophobic? Does it protect against chemical compounds? The short answer is yes, but, right? So it depends on the original structure of what it is being applied to. So if you took a raincoat, for example, this could be applied to a raincoat and then improve the already repellent properties of that typical plastic raincoat and make it healable. So you'll have a product that's even more hydrophobic, almost to the point where it's proofing, to also be sealable with this technology.
Thank you, John. I just want to jump in. We are at time, so please continue these conversations in the chat or jump into your team room. Daniel, did you?
Yeah, I think I'm going to introduce the next team. I love that point came up of making a new technology in service of the status quo versus reimagining what the status quo might look like, using it as a stepping stone. Those two very different ways of looking at technological breakthroughs. And finally, for our next pitch, I'm happy to introduce Team Ocean Bridge, who asked, what if we could improve international partnership through intentional collaboration? They were assisted by new coach Andrew Adamczyk from the Illinois National Guard and alumni coach Becky Gorman. Ladies and gentlemen, Team Ocean Bridge.
Hello, everybody. I have the proud chance to represent Team Ocean Bridge. I'm Captain Cody Nichols. I go by Turbo. And I really have to start off with thanks. Thanks to the judges for being here. Thank you for the audience. Just thank you for our coaches and mentors. I got to give a special shout out to all the academic institutes, the minority serving institutions, government and commercial agencies that picked up our phone calls, to the Air Force CNODP ponies who advised us on emerging technology. And what I've really learned about Project Mercury, for those of you who don't know, our pitch is within 7 minutes. Innovation does not happen in 7 minutes. It takes a deep amount of time to establish a community that grows towards a single vision. And for Team Ocean Bridge, our goal was to establish international trust and partnerships. How does the Air Force do that? How does the DoD do that? Right? And so what we thought is, what does the globe suffer from? What do people everywhere in the world, how can we all come together towards a single vision, right? And for us, that was humanitarian assistance, disaster relief, and combating climate change. When we looked at this problem, we really analyzed two key areas. The first thing is, we actually do not understand complex catastrophe. We don't understand how impacts cascade to create horrible situations for people. In 2017 alone, the DoD had to spend $1.2 billion on disaster relief for the Gulf and Atlantic hurricanes. That year, prior to the forecast, the climate risk index for Puerto Rico, they've hit the charts for the very first time. Says Puerto Rico is at risk based on their socioeconomic and infrastructure for vast impacts. So when Hurricane Maria rolled through and took out 1,500 roads and took offline 15 or 95% of all communication systems, you couldn't talk. It's a $139 billion investment at least to recover from that. But what happens if you add an algebraic X to that equation and then also leverage that and conduct cyber attacks or supply line interdictions? We are not great at understanding that. However, the capabilities exist out there in the world to bring this together. But more importantly is the human fabric of all this. Inadequate communications are the needless catastrophe. 64 people died in Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico from a flood, a storm surge, or direct impacts from Hurricane Maria. It was the post response of Hurricane Maria where almost 3,000 people died because they couldn't pick up their cell phone and call their family. Response forces from the DoD and FEMA could not prioritize accountability and lives because they had no idea what was going on. There was no infrastructure, there was no communication systems. This can't happen. We have the technology, we have the understanding to prevent these things from happening. And what makes it complex versus an incident or an event of catastrophe is it has the chance to change the national moral fabric of a society for decades. People lose their mental health, their jobs, their well-being simply because they can't communicate. And when we looked at this problem, it's one of private capital investment, private equity, right? Right now, there is a $1 trillion investment gap on average for most countries around the world to meet the height of their peer competitors, right? To establish telecom infrastructure at a level that is adequate to survive these catastrophes, right? Whether man-made or natural disaster. But the problem gets even worse when you couple least developed countries on top of climate risk indexes. It is a substantial gap in the market, right? Myanmar takes $51 billion to get their infrastructure at a level that supports their country alone, but there's an $8.5 billion investment gap. We can't answer that, and neither does most of the world want to answer that. So we have to figure out a way to help attract equity to invest in these technologies. So we're Team Ocean Bridge, and we're here to solve that problem. What we are is actually a whole of the nation. We're not the DoD, we're not the US government. We are academia, we are minority serving institutes. We are commercial companies from Silicon Valley, from Austin, Texas, from Washington, DC. We are the government as a whole. We are nonprofits from the Pacific Disaster Center, the SHU Foundation, and the Roberto Clemente Foundation. We are all coming together to solve a single vision and a problem of telecom communications for least developed countries. And what our solution is proposing is that we become customers of communities that can drive solutions themselves, especially within the emerging technology and green sector markets. What this allows is that one, to enhance and create and merge those prediction capabilities we need to understand complex catastrophes, allowing us to posture resources and asset management better in anticipation of those events. It enhances our response time. It allows us and response forces to fall in on decentralized, trusted communication systems meshed together where those partners can come in and reinvigorate with high equity capabilities these networks. So those people can pick up their phone and text their family without the big need of a telecom infrastructure behind them. You know, this saves money, long-term strategy and planning, but what it ultimately does is it helps us save lives, which builds that international trust that we need to compete in the market. And for those of you that, don't study China really well, it's really funny. China is out capitalisting us. They are underbidding us and establishing global placement and access in key areas through their market strategy, right? And so we need a whole of the nation strategy to combat that. And we need to educate our partners. We need to create economic growth and jobs so that they can do it themselves without us. And we establish these deep networks. They build catastrophe resistant systems that ultimately will attract private equity. So we're here to catalyze those things. And our biggest advantage as the United States is diversity. So using historical Black colleges and universities, using the minority serving institutes and nonprofits, we can create these partnerships to make that happen. So our strategy looks at how do we take Team Ocean's Bridge current deep network and expanding network and look at things of converging emerging tech with green growth. And why is this important? Well, when you look at private equity and capital investment, it is rising for green and sustainable technology. They are attracted to those things because there's a higher return on investment than traditional infrastructure investments. So by using our venture capitalist network and commercial networks, we can converge those to identify it and then move into the next stage, which is partnering minority serving institutions, nonprofit, and commercial companies with least developed countries' counterparts. Ultimately, this creates sustainment and economic growth through incentivized technology that they employ themselves. They build these catastrophe resistant systems and communication that are also tackling climate change and understanding greenhouse gas emissions, water quality, air quality, that ultimately will attract the additional private equity and private capital banks to continue to invest. And now we have a continuous loop, and the DoD in the United States does not need to be a part of anymore. Just for Puerto Rico alone, if I had 6 highly capable people at my selection and $1.4 million, within 12 months, I could establish full coverage of a decentralized communication network within Puerto Rico alone. And so what I'm asking here from the DoD today, and anybody on this line willing to contribute, no more studies, no more research. Like, let's put our money where our mouth is and actually go and do something. We have Puerto Rico, which is the perfect place to do a case study, to develop a whole nation strategy to take to other least developed countries coupled with climate change that are going to be impacted. So what Ocean Bridge needs to finish this execution is they need a DoD level executive sponsor, right? This is a joint community built already. We need to find the appropriate housing for that. We need $1.4 million in seed funding to go and execute this plan within 6 months on the ground. And what you're going to get in return is you're going to get a deep partnership of STEM developed agreements in place. For example, Pacific Disaster Center, University of Hawaii, coupled with the University of Puerto Rico. You're going to get an education and curriculum roadmap for emerging technology and green technology that you actually don't even find within the academias within the United States. You'll have a self-scaling decentralized communication network that will do full coverage of Puerto Rico within 12 months. You're going to create economic job growth into advanced tech sectors, and we're going to have commercial partners create pathways from low-tech jobs to high-tech jobs. And we're going to come back after that 6-month time frame, and we're going to develop we'll deliver you a whole of the nation strategy to take this to other least developed countries. Again, no more just talking about it, no more studying. We have gone all across law enforcement, the interagencies, the intelligence community, and all places within the DoD. We've cross-leveled our knowledge, and we just need to do something now. No more 100 briefs to find the right person to say yes. I think, like, in this audience alone, this can happen. We just need to do. We're Americans, right? We're about competition. We don't need to study the problem anymore. So we're Team Ocean Bridge. We're here to build that trust. And I look forward to the feedback on how you're going to support this operation moving forward.
Thank you, Cody. Thank you, Team Ocean Bridge. I see already a series of questions in the chat, but we're going to open up with our judges and start with General Mayer.
Thank you so much. I have led teams in HADR situations, so I obviously have had firsthand knowledge of what broke down in those situations. So thank you so much for this presentation to kind of get after that. So my curiosity comes from the way that you framed it, because the fact that I get the frustration of the frozen middle, and I get that, you know, you really want to get to, let's get to action versus the talking about it. And so I am all for that. What I am curious about is, well, let me zone in on something that just has got me hung up. The MSIs, the minority serving institutions. Is there something unique about those MSIs that you've really targeted that? Because I got to tell you, you don't know where the good ideas come from. And I find that if you cast a wider net, you can glean the best of the ideas and bring together teams in a different way. So can you tell me why you focused in on MSIs?
Yes, ma'am. So it is actually a whole of academia, but specifically locking in on MSIs, there are relationships within those that allow them to expand globally more easily than just our traditional ways of reaching out to people. So they can, through their own decentralized network, establish those relationships into those other least developed countries better than we can oftentimes, or we are just catalyzing that. And that's kind of what we found from our initial research and example and asking people to do that for us.
Okay, and I noticed you had guardsmen on your team. Obviously, they are a resource in the partnerships that we could start to gather some of the best talents worldwide, the partnership programs that they have, and that they're already there, right? So that they can give us that on the ground context of what would help us be ready to go earlier. Have you guys explored that?
Yes, ma'am. And Andrew was our coach, deep ties to guardsmen. And in addition, it is that, right? We have to take those government relationships also, but you also need the nonprofits and the commercial industry and the academia all doing it at the same time. And that's really the point that we were trying to get across.
So you're saying Ocean Bridge is your synthesizer of those?
Correct, ma'am. Focused on catastrophe resistant emerging and green technology and the education and job growth of that.
Okay, thank you.
I'd love to ask a question. So I'm trying not to dig into the details and nerd out too much on this because I actually did a research project with AFRL like 10 years ago, looking at bringing products to market in LDCs and how do you consider context of each one, and how do you have to design specifically to one, or do you look at a broader network in that product development process? And so it's actually you're really near and dear to my heart here. And I have to say, one of our biggest findings was there's just incredible local knowledge of a way things that are done that you can take advantage of to really scale a product like what you're talking about there. You're talking about involving a lot of people and changing their behaviors. And so I'm just curious, is your plan to partner with local organizations or to really understand local user needs to get them excited to adopt your product? Or I'm just kind of curious how you plan to take advantage of local communities and especially as you're scaling products, looking at the differentiation between those communities.
Rachel, great question, actually. And I don't want to dive into the details of all the specifics, but we're looking at blockchain communication technologies that will incentivize these least developed countries, right? And so when you're talking about being in the Philippines or Taiwan and being a fisherman and being able to extend communications, those incentivized things that you extend from that communication network often will exceed your pay that you receive in real life, right? So that's one form, and the other is through the local excitement that is created through the government officials and the education system and the commercial technologies, right? And their partnerships to get that out into the world, right? We can't come at this with a single DoD lens. It's just we won't be able to compete against China in that way. So you have to bring all the resources that we have from the nation to get after it.
Awesome, thanks.
If I could ask a question, I'm gonna first say that great job by this team as well. So just take a deep breath, relax. We're not gonna attack you on this, but I'll ask you to be a heretic for a minute. First, how many people on your design team are Air Force? Rough guess.
Our core team extends from Air Force. That's how Project Mercury started. But over the last 60 to 90 days, our core team extends folks within SOCOM, within USDA, within also still within AMC, within USAID, within these minority serving institutes. I would say Team Ocean Bridge is actually a rich community of flat communications with maybe about 20 to 30 solid people tied into these various institutions that want to get after the problem.
Okay. Now, the bulk of your design deliverable just very broadly, is you're looking at a technology and innovation as getting that into, these areas where there's failure, there's frustration, there's humanitarian crises. So I'll be a heretic from my end, because I work for SOCOM, but I'm going to ask you all to be heretics, put on the heretic hat as well as a designer. So within SOCOM, I work a lot with organizations on two ends of the spectrum. There are those that are doing what they call exquisite capability, the raids, the high tech flashbang. It's in the news if they want it to be, and the majority of the enterprise does really prefer that because there's quick payoffs and wins and success. On the other side of SOCOM is the unconventional warfare, foreign internal defense, these slow, irregular, very, very low cost, long-term challenges, which aren't as attractive, and they're not as good for careers, and they don't involve a lot of technology and so on and so forth. So there's this deep tension in SOCOM. What I'll ask you as a heretic is, does the US Air Force as an institution, being a air domain high-tech service, is there an attraction, even potential blinders that are forcing even your design endeavors to look towards technology as something that's kind of this almost magical key that's going to provide the solutions that we've not been able to hit, even though in Afghanistan in 20 years, we've spent so much money and so much tech only to see it all collapse. So I'll pause there. Once again, heretic hats firmly on our heads.
Hey, Ben, I'm actually sorry if my delivery led to that questioning. It's not about technology at all. It's about the education and job growth to create the competition, whether that is with telecom or a foreign adversary. And that is a long play, right? We're actually in the economic warfare right now. And that's what we need to address. And that takes time. We're looking as technology as a bridge, right? So to bond us together over disaster relief and climate change, because we all face that together. So looking at this emerging tech as a vehicle to deliver that long-term strategy.
Okay, I think we have time for about one more question if we have one more in the audience.
I think one of the things I like about what you're doing here is it's a Trojan horse. The issue is if you're fighting a monological competitor, you have to diversify and create conundrums, whether it's pharmaceuticals or consumer electronics. And this seems like a really good way to do it. I would just get to know that a lot of those alliances, one of the mistakes the military I see in the last few years makes over and over and over again, those alliances already exist. The issue is, can we tap into those alliances in a way that we're considered a productive member of those alliances? And one of the things I keep seeing is, you'd rather turn around and build $100 million, unit or new thing than actually go to the meetings that go on in the academy or go on in these NGOs. So step one, I think you've done a lot of research on this. I know in our office hours, you've done a lot of thinking about this. I think what I pick is one or two of them. And the other thing I'd like you to think about is, nobody really cares about innovation. What they care about is you solving their problems. Right now in the news every night is Belarus, right? Our friend Lukashenko is, allowing everybody from the Middle East to sort of funnel through the Belarus to create problems in, in countries that we already are having some challenges with. This might be a really interesting test case, and you might get more yeses on this more immediately if this was packaged as a solution, a Trojan horse to their problem. Just a thought. So I like the direction this is going, and I really like that you picked a place to put this direction. But I also think the more you can make this current to somebody else's problem, the more likely you are to get funding, and the more likely you're going to be able to build these alliances without a whole bunch of work and a long runway per your request. Nice job.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff, for that. And I want you to know that the Team Ocean Bridge Network is looking into Indo-PACOM nonprofit commercial relationships through that lateralism. We kind of honed in on Puerto Rico permissively to, at least rapidly test that this is a solid strategy and plan to then execute where it is more semi-permissive.
All right. Excellent work. Congratulations to all of our teams and wonderful presentations there. We appreciate all of the great questions in the chat. All of these participants have their work cut out for them to challenge themselves with all of the impressive ideas that came up and questions there. And these teams will stick around during the judges' deliberation if you have additional questions.
We'd now like to invite our distinguished judges to convene in the judges' breakout room. If you haven't already done so, you can see the button on the screen that invites you to that room. Please click on it and head over to the deliberation. While they do this, we'll show some short videos highlighting the work of our 3 remaining Cohort 5 teams. Members of each of these teams are here, so keep asking the questions, the great questions you've had throughout today, and type those into the chat as these videos are presented.
And please do stick around, because at the end of the videos, you, the audience, will have the opportunity to vote on which you believe is the best video in the Project Mercury People's Choice Awards.
Awesome. So the first video is going to be from the Quad Squad. And this team is using gaming to accelerate emotional competency work for all of our airmen. They were coached by Trevor Elbin. Take a look.
Hello, we are the Quad Squad, a team dedicated to preparing fellow airmen for future challenges, and our focus is Project Vector, the virtual emotional cognition trainer. A near-peer conflict will create casualties not seen in generations. Strong emotional reactions to dramatic events are what make wars terrible. Our airmen will operate in these conditions that will affect them emotionally, and the proactive approach is to better prepare them to process and recover from these emotions. Emotional intelligence is a trainable skill which strengthens resiliency and can meet these training needs rapidly at an affordable price with existing technology. Gamification of training offers a proven method for advanced adult learning through the use of leaderboards, storylines, appealing aesthetics, measurable accomplishments, and hey, they're fun. Virtual reality games have the added benefit of simulating complex situations and dynamic environments. This creates the perfect environment for risk acceptance so that valuable insights can be gleaned from failures. Effective emotional quotient training, or EQ training, is 360-degree feedback. Some barriers to accurate feedback is direct confrontation and organizational structure. Gamified VR EQ training would help airmen to practice giving and receiving actionable feedback in less threatening environments. Our next generation of airmen will have spent significant developmental years with distance learning and indirect communication. Here is how we overcome those limits. Project Vector is a virtual reality EQ enhancing game that removes organizational barriers to better develop leaders at all levels. We developed a prototype game where players use positive and negative personality traits to share their perspectives of each other and how they feel about themselves. Players trade cards to describe one another and explain how these traits turn into actions. Our experiment with Grand Forks Air Force Base Airman Leadership School provided valuable feedback and data. Participants were physically separated but connected digitally via the tabletop simulator game engine. Although testing was limited, 60% of participants agreed that the game helped reinforce EQ skills, and 80% felt more comfortable giving feedback when not directly across from another player. The average time for a professional game developer to produce a virtual reality game is about 8 to 10 weeks and costs about $80,000. VR computer hardware and commercial internet costs are estimated at around $1,000 per setup. However, many units and individuals already have some of this equipment, and their proliferation is on the rise. To help cut costs and curtail some bureaucracy, we have been sponsored by AETC A9 Innovation and Analysis to seek out educational partnership agreements, or EPAs, to develop products through civilian university programming courses. Although a less costly option, development is slower and with less control, but gains an outsider's perspective and the expertise of those on the cutting edge of a variety of fields. We are currently in talks to establish EPAs with the University of North Dakota, Iowa State University, and Full Sail University, but we believe the focused attention of additional sponsorship to pursue professional game developers and funding of $80,000 can bring this project into reality fast enough to maintain relevance and meet the leadership development requirements of tomorrow's airmen today.
All right, fantastic work, Quad Squad. Up next, we have from the Hit Squad, their video. This team researched pathways to creating a better innovation marketplace. And here is their video titled Side of Truth, unless I misread that.
The HIT Squad was tasked to investigate collaborative innovation networks and how we can better synchronize current efforts and grow more grassroots innovation across the service. So with that, let's hit it. Do you ever get the impression that innovation across the DoD is just going around and around circles, over and over with no real progress? It's time for that to change, and with your help, the HIT Squad knows how to make that happen. So what will we do? We're going to create a centralized location, a structured and standardized process, and set up a seamless transition plan to ensure we maximize innovation for our future force. This isn't just a solution to solve today's problems, but most and more importantly, our future endeavors. We have 600,000 strong. These members have a ton of talent and just need the right motivation to apply. Have a one-stop shop where sponsors with problems, innovators, and talent all converge to discuss issues, present problems, form teams, and create solutions. The marketplace has to incentivize all parties and be easy to use and on a platform our airmen are used to being on every single day. Collaborate with other sponsors with similar issues, use innovation funds to provide incentives, scan problems to solve, build a team, and chase those most valuable problems. So how's it done today? It's pretty comical, right? Well, as you can see, this is a map of the innovation ecosystem organization throughout the DoD. How can you shy away from reinventing the wheel when you can't even understand the wheel? There's a ton of bureaucracy and red tape that you have to navigate and overcome. Hierarchical structures have a difficult time building an innovative culture and are inherently resistant to change. The Air Force is spending millions of dollars and try to jumpstart innovation, but we haven't changed our organizational structure or our culture. Luckily, we have that solution. You can have your solution solved with a force of 600,000 strong with better processes and procedures. In our journey, we've discovered we have lots of websites, but they don't seem to be helping. The real question is, why aren't these methods helping? And how do we overcome these barriers? The HIT Squad believes the barrier that hasn't been addressed is the motivation to our workforce. So how will it work? Innovators can build teams, brainstorm solutions with market forces in play, and draw more talent to bigger problems. Talented individuals like programmers, 3D printing experts, tool manufacturers. The bigger the problem across the Air Force, the higher we anticipate the incentive growing. Some famous guy in the Air Force once said, "The moment of truth, there are reasons or results. Which side of the truth are you on?"
All right, thanks, Hit Squad. And the last video we have today is from team Insert Your Name Here, or sorry, Insert Name Here. Yes, that's their name. They were coached by Joe Bisson, yours truly, and my partner in crime, David Tanner.
When people think of innovation, a lot of times they think of this word with a big I and a lot of buzzwords. That's really hard to swallow for people that are trying to solve actual problems in the Air Force. But just like kids that don't want to eat their vegetables, you can't make airmen innovate. While the Chief of Staff of the Air Force has said every airman an innovator, sometimes it's just not possible for airmen to get away, think, and solve problems. We think that on Team 8, we've come up with a great solution. We're calling this Airman Sabbaticals, and this is a 5 to 10 day getaway for airmen that uses permissive TDY approved by squadron commanders to allow them to think big and solve the Air Force's biggest issues. What we found as we looked at this problem was that squadron commanders were having a hard time approving any time away because they didn't know what the airman was working on or who they were working with. If we could codify a permissive TDY rule in the Leave AFI in order to give airmen time off to innovate, this would allow a culture shift for squadron commanders to know that it was okay to approve their airmen time away. Our biggest solutions are just waiting for your approval. If you like this idea, please contact us.
All right,
All right,
thank
thanks,
you.
Team INH. Now it's time to vote. So we need everybody in the audience to, there's going to be a poll that's going to display here in a moment, and we need you to put in your best vote. Who do you think needs to be the People's Choice Award for the videos you just saw? While that's going on, and the judges continue to deliberate, we're going to have the distinct pleasure next of welcoming our co-sponsors for today's event from the Air Force Cyberworks. Daniel, I'm sure you know him very well. I'm delighted to introduce Austin Wiggins, who will share a few words with you about what we're doing at Cyberworks and how these innovators can plug in. So be sure to get your votes in first, but Austin, welcome.
Perfect, and thank you, Toga, for the introduction. Before I start, is it okay if I share my screen?
Yes. Can you make it?
Is it not giving you the permission?
It might be because the poll is live. Oh, there we go.
Sorry, technology can be a little funky sometimes, as I'm sure we're all aware of at this point in time. So hey, we're Air Force Cyberworks. I'm Staff Sergeant Austin Wiggins, and I am a futurist and designer there at Air Force Cyberworks. Some of you who've been through the cohort with Project Mercury might be familiar with me. I've been a guest lecturer and done some pitch coaching as well. I've been super excited to see how they've developed over the time since the last time I sat down as a pitch coach, and just want to say good luck to everybody. And now we'll talk about Cyberworks. So I think it's important to get from the get-go that we have cyber in our name, but that's not all that we do. Cyberworks is who we are because we are AdCon to the Air Force Academy. And so we are stationed directly on Air Force Academy grounds. We deal with cadets, as we'll explain a little bit later. But we are also OpCon to Air Combat Command. And part of that agreement between us and Air Combat Command is that we deal with problems that are related in the cyber domain. But when we say cyber, we mean big C cyber as opposed to sort of little c directly related to cyber systems. Anything that can affect a cyber operator or a cyber system can be things that are within our domain. So what's our mission? Our mission is to rapidly prototype solutions to DoD and Air Force and now Space Force problems by identifying and focusing on user needs. And our vision is to instill this culture of continuous problem solving and improvement by putting, of course, users at the forefront of every Air Force initiative that we have. Now, we offer quite a few things from sort of the facilitative aspect, UX design, and in our hosted events, we have specific tailored showcases or tailored workshops, tech showcases. Something recently that we're actually working towards is a collider with industry related to quantum technology, which we're really excited about putting together and seeing what that future of quantum technology looks like for the implications of the design of that technology for the Air Force. We're also connected with various actors within industry, where we are partnered with various Air Force accelerators, ArtWorks, and many others. So our connections run pretty deep. And of course, we have access to the cadets and the faculty, which gives us a twofold perspective. One being we have highly technical experts in their field that we can source for related problem solving. But also we have some of the youngest minds that we can possibly grab from the Air Force that are going through the Air Force Academy that we can either work through cohorts and or use their collective intelligence and their perspective as being, a younger generation than even myself, to bring that fresh perspective to these problems. And so we at Air Force Cyborgs have 3 different lines of effort, and you can read those, but they're easily summarized by doing the actual problem solving through some form of human-centered design, and all of those things that employ. The effort line of 2, which me as a futurist is most excited about, is forecasting technology, and then the implications of technology on social, technological, political, economic, and environmental sort of environments. And that's sort of the line of effort that I was talking about with that quantum showcase. And then our 3rd line of effort, because we're within the academy, it's really important that we not just sit there and learn about these frameworks and apply these frameworks that are also used in industry, but we bring those back to the cadets that work there, that live there, that basically breathe there at the academy, so that they understand how to use these human-centered design methodologies and become activated components within the Air Force through this partnership. And we have various elements within our portfolio, and I think one of the ones worth mentioning is something that we actually just got done with today, which is the Department of Economics and Geosciences department recently tapped us for a vision and strategy workshop, where we had just spent 3 hours in a workshop trying to get 30 people within this Department of Geosciences and Economics together on the same page of what is a shared vision. And a lot of what was implied there was some futures work, right? We wanted to make sure that we were aware of all the possible future scenarios they were looking at, so that when we talk about the future, we're all on the same page, and then converge on some common themes on what that future might be, so that by the end we had an output that showed exactly what the future might be for this organization, or at least some possibilities that drove that vision. We've also done some work recently with Naval Postgraduate School and Air University, some of which the people are currently here in this call, where we talked about how do we essentially help bring grassroots innovation education to airmen and guardians. Now, our ecosystem is pretty dynamic. So for instance, we have top of the class to like highest class designers that you can possibly ask for. One of my coworkers is essentially not the grandfather, but learned from the grandfather of user experience. And so having that direct line to somebody with that level of experience in the field is obviously just bar none. Like, you can't compare it to that level of direct access to that type of person. But we also have technologists and other staff that are focused on problem solving. And again, it's not just that cyber lens that we're talking about. Talking about our customers more specifically, we've worked anywhere from headquarters Air Force level down to like a base level Spark cell. So we run the whole gamut of the Air Force, but we also work with any other government agency, partners within the DoD. So we are not essentially limited just to the Air Force and the Space Force. We work with the DoD and other government agencies. And we're very heavily partnered with both small, medium, and large businesses, academic institutions, and various labs, both regionally and sort of nationally. And here's just a slide everybody has to have of like, here are the people we partner with. It's sort of, a bit ubiquitous thing. We work with AFWorks, we work with Space Camp, Platform One, kind of you name it, it's on here somewhere if you squint real hard. But I'm not asking you to look at every single one of these things. So now that's the end of my slide. There's a QR code if you're interested in finding out more about us. You can scan it with your phone directly from your screen if you'd like. You can also check out airforcecyberworks.com. You can call us at the number that's there. You can also email us at that number. We're also on social media in various places like Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook. But I actually wanted to leave that last bit of time that I have for questions because I find Q&As a little more engaging than if I talk for long periods of time. So I'll open up for questions. And I'll stop sharing my screen. Oh, that's a great question, Celeste. So in terms of Project Mercury working with Cyborgs and or vice versa, I've been talking with Dr. Ethan Eagle about bridging this gap because both them and I feel like there's very natural collaboration between us to the point where I have sat down as a guest lecturer for some of the things that are happening in Project Mercury for some of the groups. And we're sitting down acting as pitch coaches. So I think it's the start of bridging that connection between us that is still sort of in its nascent form right now. Any other questions about what we do at Cyborgs, what sort of projects we run? And yeah, Daniel, I know you're emceeing here today, but if you want to fill in any gaps of why I left, feel free to do so.
Yeah, I did want to say that a lot of people across the Air Force can participate in CyberWorks efforts. If you watch our LinkedIn or our other social media, you'll see that sometimes we're calling out for participants. Also, if you follow Austin and I, or if you're in like Agitari spaces, for example, you'll see that we have upcoming projects and there's a solicitation for participants. So I find there's often Project Mercury participants engaged in CyberWorks projects just because there are kind of Project Mercury participants all over the place. It's one of the cool things about it. But one of the things I'm most excited about is this thing we're doing for half A1D in January, looking at the future of enlisted education, across the Air Force. And there's currently, actually, the solicitation may have closed by now, but that kind of thing for many of our projects, there's almost like an open invite to both participants, and it totally depends on the hosts and who they want to invite to participate. But I'd say that's a good reason to keep an eye out for what we're sharing on LinkedIn and what CyberWorks is sharing through their social media as well.
Perfect. I wanted to take a chance to answer ATC 89's question about human-centered design education and training and how that's being applied on the backside. So first off, we're teaching cadets about human-centered design, right? I don't know how much I need to explain for human-centered design, but the idea and painting in broad strokes, and I know Ben's here, so I'm like, how can I choose my best words? And I'm kidding, Ben. But it's basically about how do we make sure that you put the human experience at the forefront of whatever is being designed, or to use other words, if you're bringing a new innovation to the Air Force, how do we make sure that we're not just finding a solution? Like we have a solution, we're just trying to plug a solution into that problem. We're starting at sort of the groundwork, what is the human problem, what is the human need, and then designing the solution based on the human need. That's sort of if you wanted to like just paint broad strokes definition of that, and how that applies, how that ends up getting applied as we teach it to cadets and to other people, because we've had other initiatives where we've taught human-centered design to to various groups in the Air Force. And I mean groups as in the structural group, not the broad group. What they do is we sort of teach them as a way to activate them, right? We want activated innovators who can then take these skill sets and apply them to whatever problems are relevant for themselves. So we've had instances on the cadet side where we have taught them how to go through this process, and then they go back to their Spark cell and they facilitate an event with these mindsets, and then that ends up outputting some type of innovation. And that's also happened sort of on the active duty Air Force side with some of the projects that Daniel has been a part of. So that's the short way to answer that, is that our goal in education is to sort of act as an activator, so that when they're in the field of doing these activities, they have a specific skill set to apply. But I'm going to go ahead and end it there. I will stay around in chat if you have any more questions, but I'm going to pass it now over back to the MCs.
Thank you, Austin.
All right, excellent. So yeah, if you want more information about Air Force CyberWorks, Austin and I are both fairly, am I frozen right now? Or that's Austin. Okay. So welcome back, judges. We know deliberations must have been difficult and everybody's on the edge of their seat. So we're excited to hear who won which awards, which include the Prismatic Awards, the People's Choice Best Video Award, based on our poll with great participation there. And finally, the top prize, the Innovation Excellence Award. Audience, please feel free to use your reaction buttons in Zoom to show support.
All right, first up for the Prismatic Awards, these awards go to the team who most embodied the spirit of each category in the innovation genome or competing values framework. Each judge was assigned a color by a not so random selection process. First, General Mayer will present the SAGE Award, representing the Innovation Genome Yellow Quadrant. This award goes to the team that best exemplified collaboration, values, and a focus on doing things that last. Ma'am, over to you.
So I will tell you, this team won due to the fact that they didn't go for small, they went for big, right? And that this team looked at it as a start that would require nurturing and lots of engagement to keep it sustainable for the long term. And so I am proud to announce that Team 3 is the winner of the SAGE Award, and that is the Ocean Bridge team. Thank you so much.
All right, congratulations. And next up, Dr. Zweibelson will present my personal favorite, the Artist Award, representing the Innovation Genome Green Quadrant. This award goes to the team that best exemplified creation, novelty, and a focus on doing new and sometimes deviant things. Dr. Zweibelson.
So I would say all the groups did very well in this area, and I'll tell you, just behind the scenes, the judges, what we saw was innovation is a long journey, and we don't see any of you at the end of it right now. We see you kind of in the middle, so there's so much more to go. But at this point right now, we feel that Team 2, the self-healing materials, is the most creative at this point in your design. So congratulations to Team 2. Well-deserved job, good job, and on to the next award.
Thank you. Next, Ms. Kirkhan, confirm she's here, will present the Engineer Award, representing the Innovation Genome Quadrant. This award goes to the team that exemplified control, process, systems, and focus on things that do the right thing every time. Ma'am?
Awesome. Well, it was such a pleasure to watch all of these pitches. And I can say, as an entrepreneur myself, it is very, very hard to get these right. And it takes a lot of development and refinement over time. So thank you for all of your hard work. It's a journey for sure. And so for the control, do things right, as an engineer myself, I'd love to award the first team that went, Team 1, for solving a real problem, getting ready to execute, and really working together to make all of that happen. So thank you.
Fantastic. Congratulations. You said the first team that went, so I believe that would be Team 7.
The Chain Gang.
The Chain Gang. Fantastic. All right. And finally, Dr. DeGraff is going to present the Athlete Award, representing the Innovation Genome Blue Quadrant. This award goes to the team that excelled in competition, speed, and had a focus on doing things now. Dr. DeGraff.
Yeah, it's really, it's very funny, Daniel, because I'm currently today grading my finals here at Michigan. And I'm going to consider this your midterm, because what I want to see is I want to see 6 weeks from now, who's actually got a plan to get money, who's actually got a stake in the ground in 6 weeks. So I'm giving all the teams an incomplete, right? I'm giving you an incomplete, but it doesn't mean I won't give you, there won't be an A awarded here. There will. You should know, Michigan, we grade on a curve. You should know this is a competition. So the notion is in 6 weeks, and I'll make Celeste Drzansky my marker here. I want to see who's actually got a strategy to knock on a door, get some real money, get something, a stake in the ground. I know you all got plans, but I want to see a little more than that. So we'll award that in the next 6 weeks. So you've got a little more competition. We'll consider this your midterm. We'll have a little more competition before we give that one away.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. So it's now time for the best short film. And judges, I know you weren't here for this because it happened while you were in deliberation, but the People's Choice Award. We asked everybody who is here today and all of our teams to produce short clips to have some tradable stuff out there. And I want to thank the audience for 100% participation. You guys were all obviously paying attention. And based on your votes, I want to share the results now and show the People's Choice Award for Cohort 5, Project Mercury. Award goes to, drum roll, to the Quad Squad with 46% of the vote. People are on board with your gamification of emotional intelligence and emotional quotient. So congratulations there. Finally, we're going to bring it over to General Mayer to give us some closing remarks on behalf of General Hecker and herself to announce the Innovation Excellence Award, ma'am.
You know, innovation is not easy, and anybody that tries to portray it as being easy, is just faking it. But it is hard work, and especially when you do it in a group setting, it becomes even messier, but way more fun, because the ideas you didn't think of, there's going to be always somebody there to help fill in those gaps, right? And so the bigger the group, the more you can crowdsource this, the better your product. And you guys took the diversity within your group and made it sing. And there is a lot of work to be done, right? You are halfway through. This is your midterm, and it will take more than just kind of throwing this on some slides to bring it into life. So I encourage you to go back and, bring a couple of other team members, bring a bunch of devil's advocates, and then see how you can make your product maybe even cost inducing to the enemy, right? Because that's where we really want to be. Because everything can drive us crazy on the budget, but when you can cost induce, it's even better. So on behalf of General Hecker, my biggest thanks to those of you that took a risk, took a leap, and then came over and tried to thaw the frozen middle, and you did a great job today. So I guess I get to give an overall winner, is that right?
Yes, ma'am, our Innovation Excellence Award.
All right, so I will tell you as a mom, I'm pretty secretly happy about giving this award, because this award I could see would have so many great applications, not only in our safety, but in the way that we could do business in the future. And so Team 2, Team House, you are our winners. Woohoo! Way to go.
All right, congratulations to Team House. Thank you, General Mayer, and thank you to all the judges for your time and commitment to these innovative Project Mercury Cohort 5, and congratulations to the winners. But everybody's a winner today because it is graduation day. The individuals on the slides, which will be shown, have all earned a Certified Professional Innovator certificate as a result of their hard work and dedication. Congratulations to all of these accomplished innovators. You are now part of the Project Mercury Alumni Network. Together, we can help be the change agents our units and our communities need. Claps.
One last thanks. I just want to thank the team of judges. I know you guys took time out of your busy day today to make this happen. And so to Rachel, to Ben, to Dr. DeGraff, and to the whole team that supports these innovators, thank you. And I hope you have a happy holidays.
Thank you, ma'am. We're just taking our time looking at the teams here, but we do want to recognize a very special group of people who are also passionate about innovation and personal growth, our coaches. So the next couple of slides will showcase these individuals who volunteered to coach and to come back and coach again and continue to invest in Project Mercury. It takes a lot of ingenuity and dedication to come and work in this environment. We have a rock star lineup of coaches, and they rarely have time in their schedule allotted for innovation or coaching, but they always make it happen. Congratulations to our new coaches, shown here in green, and thank you to our multi-cohort returning coaches on the next slide. Your wisdom and experience makes the magic happen.
And finally, the coaches came together to select most valuable players for each team. These team members showed extraordinary dedication and teamwork toward driving creativity and innovation on their teams. Congratulations to all of these MVPs.
Thank you for that, Daniel. And I did want to say one last shout out to all of our collaborative partners and collaboration partners, whether here at Air University or all across the nation here. Go ahead and throw up your favorite reaction if you're here to support Project Mercury. We just want to say thank you for being here today. And ma'am, I know it sounded like we had some final thoughts from you, General Mayor, but did you have any final comments you would like?
Nope, I'm good to go. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. And Jim, for the Project Mercury team.
My thanks to our Innovatrium partners, to all of the coaches and our innovators in residence, many of whom have joined us today for the presentation. You're unbelievable. I appreciate the work and the effort that you pour into our teams, your record of accomplishment, and what you do to raise our innovators to the next level. Thank you so much. And some special thanks for Dr. Ethan Eagle, who is the head coach for this cohort. Talk about a guy who put in the extra hours to make things happen. And right now, secretly, he and his wife are awaiting a baby. I mean, like awaiting a baby right now. He wanted to be here, but he's got a bigger thing going on this afternoon. So if you got any spare thoughts and you can send some good wishes their way, it'll be much appreciated. But this cohort was a success because of Dr. Eagle, and we thank him for it. I wish happy holidays for everyone, and I thank all of our partners who poured into this. I want to thank CyberWorks, so Daniel Halter and Austin Wiggins, you guys rock, and you're making a difference. So thank you so much for what you're doing out there at USAFA, and we look forward to building out new partnerships. Thanks to Dr. Ben Zweibelson from JSOW. They've got some great folks and great programs there. And our industry representative today, Dr. Rachel Kerr-Kahn, doing a fantastic job with her company, Productable. So thanks, everybody. Have a happy holidays.
Fly now for cohort 6.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Go to projectmercury.us and apply today for cohort 6. It's going to start late January. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. That concludes our showcase. And thank you to all involved and all around. Appreciate you.